Mr. or Mrs. Listener, we accept the fact that you're going to sacrifice a whole hour to listen to this podcast, but we think you are crazy. In the simplest terms, you see us as you want to see us. A Ninja Turtle, a Jedi, a redhead, a Mike. Sincerely yours, Redhead Family Therapy Guy, and a Mike.
Don't you forget about the bugger. There's a walk on by. You better listen to this thing. It's gonna be great. All right.
Hello.
We are back for another one, and man alive, am I excited about this one, Michael.
John is excited.
I'm excited. And you're here with the Redhead Family Therapy Guy.
And a Mike.
A Mike. You're the man. Dude, I'm excited because I remember seeing the show back when it came out, ancient,
a long time ago.
1993.
80s. Oh, 93. Whoa.
Yeah.
I thought it was late.
And I remember watching the show and getting it and being like, oh, wow, this is about the kind of life you live. And that how you live is what matters. And that life is a journey to figure out the right way to live.
Sure.
And I just, Bill Murray is in all of his glory in this show, which I, of course, have been a huge Bill Murray fan because I was a huge Ghostbuster fan as a kid. That was one of my most favorite movies as a kid. And so I was so excited to do this movie and so excited to talk about this show, and so I'm pumped, dude.
It's a good one. It's one that you can just watch over and over, and it's always good.
How interesting! You can watch it again.
Take that, comedic geniuses.
And again, you've got them outmaneuvered.
Yes, tenfold.
But I was sad to listen or to hear that Bill Murray and Ramis had a falling out over this show.
Which is really interesting because they've done a lot together. So they did Stripes together, right? I think Harold Ramis was in Stripes. Yeah. Uh-huh. They did Ghostbusters 2 together. They did this. This was their breaking up movie.
Groundhog awful. Day. What a tragedy.
And I feel like there's got to be
because this is like great. Like this is. I would. This is like one of my most favorite. This is top 10 for me. Easy.
It's I think it's a classic. There's so many different types of like feelings and thoughts that come to me when I watch the movie, and different things that I think I get out of it each time that I watch it.
Yeah.
But yes, this is their breakup movie. So
it's tragic.
Story goes, and you correct me if I get it wrong, John.
Oh yeah.
Story goes that they're having Bill Murray and Harold Ramis were having some disagreement. Some, what would you call that? Some differences of opinion on
how to deliver the movie.
Yeah. And supposedly Bill Murray was wanting it to be more philosophical and Harold Ramis was wanting it to be more comedic. And the end result was great because you get
awesome
both.
Movie.
You get both a lot, right? I feel like you do.
Yeah. So, and as a kid in 93, I loved the humor. Watching it this last time through, I was like, this is a deep movie. Because one of the things that struck me too is how much he plays out the different things of how you see people live their lives. Yeah. Indulgently, narcissistically, lustfully, just there's all these different appetites that he tries to fill in the different days, before he comes to...
And not only that, mental health, right?
Oh my gosh.
He goes through really psychotic episodes. He goes through...
Suicidal phase. Yeah. And I loved the idea that you can't die.
Oh,
I love the idea that like you're doomed to repeat it. Like suicide's not a way out,
man. Think about that. And I can't remember, my cousin has been here and she has watched some movies with me. And I can't remember if it was her or my wife, but one of them asked this question: how many days do you think it's actually been?
I think tons.
I think hundreds, if not thousands.
No. I would go further because the fact, like the scene that strikes me in is the one where he's answering the Jeopardy questions before they even say the answer.
All of them.
Yeah. And so what that was like, that's like, how many days would it take just that, let alone like when he's trying to coach, I'm trying to remember her name, the love interest,
Andy
the producer.
Yeah.
where he's trying to get the perfect date.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Oh gosh, it's just so good.
And to interesting. We're probably gonna jump around a lot in
Oh
this
yeah,
'cause
we
there's
can't.
so much.
Yeah,
but
we have
interesting.
to. I don't want to
me
go linear. So.
Is his God persona where he's like genuinely like. He's
It's
genuinely
so
like
funny.
thinking,
where he's
am
just,
I a god?
Well, he's
or
gluttony,
a part
right?
God?
That's like, well, that's where he gets philosophical, right? Like it's the first time in the movie where he's like pausing and thinking about this gift he's been given or trap that he's in, and he's just shoving himself in gluttonous. And he's like, well, and this is after the suicide phase. He's like, she's like, well, you're God. He's like, well, I'm not the God, but I'm a God.
I've got to be, right?
Something.
And that just shows that our minds, we want to make sense of things. And I think this is a kind of a paradox, a part of being human that gets us in trouble.
How so? What do you mean?
So we can't make sense of everything. Therein comes this God question of, is there a God? Well, if there's a God, why would this happen? Or why does that happen? We just can't make sense of everything, but our human minds want to.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's fascinating.
It creates hardship, right?
Well, I think, but it's also a part of our genius.
It is.
And it's something that is, laudable and incredible that there is this insatiable question and need. And what lengths we'll go to, what how far we'll go.
Well, and growth comes from that. Resilience can be built through that. Learning how to move forward even without knowing an answer. And I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but I think that's an interesting part of life, is this idea that we just don't know the answers to everything, and that can really cause a lot of heartache.
Some of us know a lot of the answers to a lot of things. Clearly.
I know a lot.
I mean, why else would you become
John
a therapist?
Knows everything.
I mean, why else would you become a therapist unless clearly
you would want to,
So hilarious.
therapists and teachers, right? They want to bless their constituents. Constituents.
That's the whole reason to become a teacher,
knowledge.
is to bless everyone with the answers that you've known.
Whenever John comes over, whenever I see John, there's this like angelic music that just plays as he walks in bright light. And I'm like,
smoke that billows across the floors as I walk in.
Yeah, and then he teaches me.
I condescend
it's glorious.
to your domain and inform you of.
I don't know all the answers, but I desire to know.
I don't. Yeah, too. I just like the. I don't know anything. I've become,
how very
that's
little
what's
do
wonderful.
we know.
That's what's wonderful about aging, because I don't think I thought I knew everything in my 20s either. But it's definitely fantastic that as you get older, you really start to realize, especially when something like, I wish I could remember. I had a realization recently. Something hit me, and I'm like, that is such a simple answer, and I'm just now like my brain is collapsing all of the different roads I've tried to go down to figure something out, and it's like it's collapsed, and it's like that's the right answer.
Well, maybe that's somewhat the difference between intelligence and wisdom, right? Wisdom is realizing that maybe I don't know everything. Yeah. Intelligence is
thinking that you do know everything.
Or just know.
Well, I was listening to a podcast today, and I was really irritated by this guest. It was Joe Rogan, and this guest, and how pretentious he was about he was making a case, which I agree with to a greater extent, about rationality. And how much better all the human race would be or is when we're rational.
So rational as in without emotion?
I was listening to a clip, so I can't justify that. I've seen this. He's had this guest on before, and I was like, yes, let's use the scientific method. And he was like making a case for data, and I'm like, yeah, there's something there. But like we as humans, I want, like, when this is what I do when I listen to podcasts, I argue or I want to talk, to the people, and I'm like, yeah, sure, like we should use data. I mean, we are blessed by data, but also like, what's fascinating and amazing about human beings is all about gut, is all about emotion, is all about experience, like art and music. Like there's something about
that's what makes our job interesting.
Yeah, there's something data driven. Maybe there is, but with like music, you know what I mean? Like that's not like I don't a data informed piece of music. I want somebody to play something from their heart.
Yeah,
you know?
I think emotion is really the driving force behind creativity. But I don't know if I'm a super creative person either. So I don't.
Of course you are.
Know. But Groundhog Day,
dude. So I mean, yeah, this show just like I love it. I love everything about it. So what's one of your favorite moments?
One of my favorite moments
from the show.
I mean, I think what's interesting to me, at least this time around, is just kind of sinking in and, like I mentioned earlier, realizing that what is the torture behind having the pain experience behind having this day after day after day, and he continues to move forward by finding meaning in different areas. And I don't, and this is kind of what you were mentioning in the beginning, right? Is that's kind of what we look for in life is to find meaning into.
Well, not everybody, but that's what's so beautiful about the movie is I think so many folks do get caught in the ruts that we see him. People get stuck in depression, and unfortunately, with that struggle, it they lose the battle. Yep. You know what I mean? And other folks do stay narcissistic and are self-important and think they know everything, and like he is at the beginning. He's so off-putting in the beginning of the movie. In a way that's endearingly Bill Murray, right? Which you still like. I still like him. Even though he's
like an a-hole. I mean, he's so.
It's just so. Because it's like so pretentious that it's fun. Like, because it's like he even is kind of silly. And I don't know if he's playing it that way or if Bill Murray can't help but play it that way. But you kind of, because it's almost like, oh, that's so cute. Because he's like, he thinks he's this big deal because he's like the weatherman for like a channel in Pittsburgh or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's like, you're not a big deal, right? Like, that's like a submarket, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I mean, he's going to the
Puxatawny.
Puxatawny Hill. And that's a great point. And that is something that I think, I saw is that, he is able to move forward and to learn and grow because it's over and over. Because he wouldn't have made it that far.
Yeah, what a great insight. He would have taken his own
life, right?
Right.
He would be dead.
Right.
But he continued. And so I think that's kind of maybe what I didn't say that very articulate, and I went down a path that I don't think I was thinking, but that is this idea that resilience, right? If we can try to have experiences and see that we can do them, then we can grow beyond what we thought we could. Now, for him, his resilience was that he couldn't die, and he kept waking up. Well, we don't have that resilience in life. We have to find our own ability to go through hard things and to see them as growth opportunities and to learn what we can take from that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we do die.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that's something from the movie that was really interesting to me is this idea that because he wasn't able to die, he was able to build resilience and growth. And so that's interesting.
What choice did he have?
He didn't have any
That's
choice.
the thing that's really cool. It's like, what choice do you have? It's
so
like,
what about us?
either you develop resilience for the tragedies and the stuckness of life. Like, well, that's just it. I mean, that's one of the fantastic points of the movie. Is like, well, you have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, or you'll die, or be miserable, or whatever. One of the moments that this time around, because I've seen it a few times, but it had been a while. And so seeing it this time around, the part that just got me was when, it's so powerful, when he comes across the homeless guy. Oh, and he's like, and he's not well, or did he die? Maybe he found him and he was dead or something like that. And he was like, no, like not on this day, like not on my day. Like that to me was like the epitome. And it was right after that he really changed, right? That was what it was, like that realization of, it's been about me. Everything's been about me. It's been about my indulgence, about what I could do, what I could get away with, right? That's the initial, like, when he's with the guys, it's like, well, if there's no consequences, we can go get smashed and you don't have a hangover tomorrow. Like, you can go do whatever you want. But that part where I think it's after he's failed with the producer and being able to seduce her or get her to love him, or he's trying to get her to love him, and that's not worked.
Well, I think he was just kind of trying to get in her pants, right?
Well, I think so, but I think so, but I think he also like really
Maybe
liked her. I think it's a little bit of both, for sure. Yeah, like it's like a conquest, but it wasn't just a conquest for
the first time I saw you.
Yeah,
he just couldn't really admit it yet,
right? Or he wasn't mature enough, but there was something about her the whole time, right?
Yeah.
But so he's not able to achieve that, and to have that conquest fulfilled. And so it's like after that's been defeated, or somewhere in that, I think, is where he stumbles across the impoverished, homeless old man. And he's like, oh, not on this day. And he takes him to the doctor and he feeds him and he like starts from the beginning of the day and he can't. And the one nurse is like, sometimes people just, it's their time,
Yeah.
And it was like, that's when it was like, oh, wait, like, there is a time, and I want to live differently. I can't save this guy. And then that's when he goes about finding all the things he can do and developing his talents for, and it's so endearing who he cultivates himself into, in the town and helping the life. I love it when he catches the kid.
Out of the tree.
Yeah, and he's all like, "You never say thank you." And he's like, "We'll see you tomorrow, maybe." It's so great. It's so great.
It is awesome. So I have a question about the old guy. I felt a lot of meaning then also.
Yeah, it took me to tears this time.
Yeah, and he has this experience, and so he's trying to save him a bunch, right? But did I miss it? I don't remember anything happening with it. They just stopped talking about the old guy.
Well, he tries. There's this. I mean, he tries to feed him. He's feeding him in the day, and he's like, "Oh, drink up as much as you want, like the soup." And then he's with him at the doctor's. And I think the finality of it is the nurse delivering the news of
that was before, because he's like, not on this day, and then he uses multiple days to try to save him. After the nurse says that to him, and then
I could be wrong.
Like,
I think you might have it flipped, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I thought the nurse. I thought that was where it ended. That stream of trying ended with the nurse's message. I could be wrong. Yeah,
and I was confused by that. Like, so does that mean he just died and he couldn't do anything?
Yeah, I think he had to surrender it. I think that's where. To me, that's what I take away from that string is that he surrenders and realizes he can't. So, well, what useful thing can I do? Because life is. I think it reminds him of the fragility of life, you know what I mean, and the loss of life. And it wasn't just about him anymore, right? Because it became about somebody else.
So then kind of the idea being, what in our personal lives do we need to surrender that maybe we really cling on to and it's hard to surrender, that will allow us to progress forward?
Yeah, well, that's that's such an insightful point, right? That we get stuck on things that we can't control, things we can't change, people we can't change, situations we can't change. And it's so significant to me that his surrender, that's the pivotal moment where he starts to make his life meaningful, and he wants to make, because he can't with this old guy. So, well, who can I? Whose day can I make better? I can't, this old guy's going to die today. So I want to make other people's lives better.
And he's having kind of growth and progression
along the way.
But maybe greater growth comes from a sacrifice. Is that kind of the idea? When I give up something that's really meaningful or hard for me, then the potential for greater growth is present? What are they saying there, do you think? Yeah,
I think growth couldn't happen until it wasn't about him anymore. That's the first time it became about someone else. And so that's where he moves out of like the narcissism, the indulgence, the what can I get out of making this day? What's wrong with me? Why am I stuck here? And then it becomes about, it's because the conquest is over because he like can't figure her out. You know what I mean? And he can't figure her out because he's not the guy she wants to be in love with.
Yeah.
Like knowing all the things and saying all the right things and doing all the things that I like isn't what makes me want to be with you, right? And he changes into that person that she does want to be with. I love when it's the last scene after she wins him in the auction, and like it goes past midnight, and she's like, "Hey, you tricked me," and he's all like, "No," and she, like, and then there was this whole idea of like, are you going to leave? And she's like, no, I'm not going to leave. Like, I own you. Like, you're mine. Like, he became the thing she wanted to be attached to, which was this guy that like saw other people, knew other people, and was engaged in doing things. He was gracious, and self-deprecating, And
I think something that I really enjoyed, or something that kind of stood out to me was towards the end, when he actually wakes up, right? So there's two separate times, right? There's the time where she says, that's when she bids on him, but there's a time separate than that where she stays over, but then he wakes up and it's not fixed. Yeah. Oh, and
that's when he really gets your great idea. Yeah, that where he is changed but not changed enough. That's great. Yeah, I totally forgot about that arc, right? Where they just have a friendship.
Because I felt like, you could have just ended it, but they didn't end the movie
there. That's right. That's absolutely right.
Because they really wanted to hone in a point. So what is the point you think that they wanted to hone in?
Well,
and maybe this is too philosophical.
No, I don't think so at all. No, I don't think so at all. No, I think it's just that his arc wasn't complete, right? So he was a fun-loving guy, and it wasn't about getting in her pants. Because in that sense, he was just being a friend.
He was just enjoying someone.
Well, and he just wanted to be with her, and they had a good night, and they're like tossing the cards, and it's all good. Like, it's just fun and warm, and there isn't an agenda.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're just being together.
So. And then, so for me, kind of taking that.
I think, I'm sorry. No, so I think one of the things about that part is he hadn't fully changed, right? I think that broke his narcissism and selfishness, and he was vulnerable with her.
Yeah.
And he said to her, I need, it's like he's asking for her help. Like, I need your help. And she not takes pity, but is like, oh, and like, oh, he's nice, and like, he's not the guy that I thought. And she's like, well, I'm going to observe and let's see. And
that's why the Groundhog Day isn't broken yet, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I really like is in that first night, he could have maybe pushed for
the lovemaking,
for sex, but I don't think.
No, I think a level of change had happened to him at that point, that it wasn't about the conquest, and he didn't need that for the affirmation. That he was happy to just be with her at this point.
Well, and I think what I love is that he's not had that change yet to where I think he could have pushed, but I don't think she would have.
Right.
But then towards the end, after the auction, when she's like, I own you, she makes a comment like, you just fell asleep last night. And it sounds like there's that change from she probably wouldn't have to, she would have been intimate with him, but it wasn't anything about that for him by the end.
Yeah.
And I think that's, the story, not that sex or whatever, but the story is that he changed to, it's not about fulfilling my immediate need.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's about finding happiness, meaning, and connection with others. Not just her, but all the townspeople, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a great, the fact that they gave you the information that it didn't happen is significant, because, men that are of value and are going to be the men that you can connect with, that are safe and that are useful, aren't the ones that's the premier fulfillment, is the sexual gratification of I'm accepted by you, and so you accepted my invitation and we had sex, right? I love that is put off, though she, like you said, she does make a comment that she would have.
It seems like that.
I remember taking note of that as well, but I think it is significant that's not what it was about. You know what I mean? Which is why it's a beautiful fulfillment of his growth.
Where I think if he were in the mind, I think with the first time she was over, I think his reason, and this is maybe we differ a little bit on this, I think his reason for not pursuing her at that time was because he was too hopeless. not because he had
changed
been
enough.
transformed.
I think he was changed enough.
Hopeless,
I guess for
and
me,
depressed.
I think for me. Oh, so you're saying he didn't go for it because he didn't think it would happen? I think it was.
I think he was hopeless in life in general, and he was so hopeless with life and direction that he didn't like. He was like, "There's no point in pursuing this."
Yeah, for me, that scene and the way that I
pause.
read it now, or the way that I related to it the last time I watched, it'd be interesting to watch again, was just that he was content with the friendship.
Well,
he was content with the companionship. He was content with the fact that she knew him and wanted to be with him, and that they were having this just nice time together.
So then that's a question, if that's content, then why have it happen twice? That's kind of where I was.
Well, because I think because it's the next arc, right? There is where he was like, okay,
but they didn't
I
need
had
a
this
bedroom scene like that to have the arc happen. They could have just had a good day and then he left her and they went. But they made it a point to have it in the bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I'm wondering is there more to it than
maybe.
just that?
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot to this movie that
there
I think
is a lot.
Hard. That's one thing that's hard about just seeing it once, right?
Yeah.
I think you really benefit, from seeing it over and over.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of a lot of the movies we pick are kind of those types of movies
you
where
want to.
You can watch them over and over. You can learn from them.
Well, I think that's when entertainment is good because there is more for you to gain from the story than you're going to get one time.
I agree.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love Napoleon Dynamite. Actually, the other movie that gets funnier to me every single freaking time I watch it is Nacho Libre. I laugh harder. I've watched it.
I'll have to watch it
10 times. I've watched it. No, you have to watch it more. The more you watch it, the funnier it gets. I love Jack Black. Jack Black's one of my favorite comedic actors. I mean, Kung Fu Panda is one of my most favorite movies ever, which will do all these movies. But yeah, I think that a movie that has something to it that is so eternally true. Yeah, you can watch it a lot because you're going to get something different every time, and this movie definitely has those flavors to it. So tell me about. So, what are your thoughts about his
this? I don't know the right term, like psychotic. Not psychotic's not the right. Where he really deals with a lot of emotional health issues. I love the car scene, right? That is really funny. Where he stills Puxatani Bill or Phil
the truck, the first suicide night, the first suicide day where he's like, I'm ending it. I've had enough. I'm having a psychotic break. Yeah. Well, and I love, of course, how they again portray a therapist. Like we're so clueless. That therapist was so clueless. When you don't even bother with therapists, they're clueless.
And after Phil is filling him in on this, what he might have perceived as a delusion, right? This delusion of I relive the same day. His response is, "Why don't we meet again tomorrow?"
He's all right,
and Phil's just like,
"Thanks." Yeah.
Like that's
case
no
in
help.
point. Yeah. You're done. I'm done with you.
And then earlier, the I don't know if it was a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I can't remember how they were. Ordering this guy,
the help he was trying to receive.
But earlier he's like, what did he say? Something like, well, that's not really what I do, or something that's not, I can't remember what he said, but he presented as really incompetent.
The therapist.
Yeah, the therapist. Therapist. And that stuck out to me.
Of course. Yeah, like totally insecure, odd looking, nervous, really tentative in his suggestions. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was really.
I think
doesn't he suggest he should do something else, or like he's wasting his time?
It's something like that's just like he's not listening to him. Right. He makes some, and then it ends with, "Well, let's meet again tomorrow." It's like he's not paying attention to what Phil is saying.
Right. Which most therapists don't pay attention.
Yeah. I'm sleeping half the time.
Sure.
So, with my eyes open. So then it's really interesting. I think my wife.
Did we answer the question on your psychotic break question? What did you ask for? I'm sorry.
I don't really remember what I asked, but it was something to the effect of just kind of asking about this mental health segment.
Yeah.
something that was really interesting pertaining to that. Something that was really interesting was I think my wife made a comment when we were watching of how cool would that be to be able to have like infinite number of days to learn, grow, progress, like to do all these different things you want to do, and you don't actually lose any time.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I was thinking, I wonder if it's kind of this idea of the grass is maybe greener on the other side type mentality, where we think, oh man, it would be so cool if this happened, or if I had this, or I had that. But maybe it really, I mean, obviously for Phil,
Right.
it's torture.
Yes, it is torture.
And I wonder if that's kind of this idea that we as humans, when we're in a place of just being human, or maybe a place of discomfort, where we think, I wish this, or I wish that, or it'd be better if this were that way, or that way. But how often do we see people that take steps to make that happen? I think of like someone that has a good job and they leave that job for a job they think is going to be better, and then it ends up
Not
being horrible.
So, yeah.
Well, that grass is greener on the other side. I don't know if that's part of it or not. But
I mean, that's what he explores, right? I mean, he explores. That's the first thing he does is like indulge in the seduction of, the actress that's the blonde or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the lady that he finds out, she obviously like rejects him, and he's like, "What is your name? Where'd you go to high school? What was your teacher's name?"
Yeah, Mrs. Brown.
Yeah,
English.
exactly.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But it doesn't satisfy.
No,
right?
and that's true, right? I mean, that's the thing that's so wonderful about them exploring the different fulfillments of the repeated day, or you know what I mean? Is like none of those things truly satisfy. They don't satiate the part of us that's human. They don't allow you to have a great day. They don't allow you to kind of enter heaven. You know what I mean? Like it is a hell. And it's fantastic though. One of the ideas that really strikes me is how at the end of the movie he's like, let's move here. It's like this place that was his hell, this place that he didn't want to go to, this place that he thought was beneath him and antiquated, becomes this place that he wants to be. It becomes his heaven, right? Which I think it's fantastic that there's this notion of creating heaven on earth, or creating heaven in your life, and that you can do that because of who you become.
Yeah,
that regardless,
it's not the place or the circumstance or the situation. It's your
it's you.
perspective.
It's how you change.
Yeah.
It's what you value. That you become angelic. That you become this useful, valuable, contributing, giving person, right? And it's so fantastic how the movie explores this evolution of realization of what isn't a fulfilling life. You know what I mean? And I think it was really pivotal. I think one of the reasons why I love this movie so much is I think it really hit me when I saw it. I must have been a senior in high school. I don't remember what month it was released or whatever, or maybe it was at college, my first year in college. But I remember it really striking me of like, oh wow, like because I think I'm very sensitive to repetition and boredom. Like I think I have a strong need for novelty and interest and growth and change. My wife and I were just talking about this in some aspects of life and what's presenting itself to us right now. And I'm highly, my wife sometimes will say to me, are you looking for a crisis? She's like, I think, you grew up in crisis, like you're comfortable, not in horrible crisis, but things not being settled, because we've got a lot of stability in our lives right now. And there's a part of me that gets very bored with that, you know what I mean? Or feels bored. And I think that really struck me seeing this movie. And I think it was an important movie in my life, because it hit me so hard that it's so important to make life and it felt so right to me, the story and that message of that's a way I need to approach life. Otherwise, it is just going to be a Groundhog's Day.
Well, I think we all, I think for the most part, we all live Groundhog Day.
Well, you have to,
because we have our repetitious
you have
things,
to,
right?
Well, I mean, there's a certain, maybe there are people that can live fascinating, chaotic lives. But I mean, if you're going to have kids, you got to have you got to have some modicum amount of stability. You got to have something consistent that you can provide for. I mean, at least I needed to have that sense of like I have a job and I can provide for my kids. And so like you need some stability if you're going to have at least a family on some level. I mean, there are tons of people I suppose that have no stability that have families, but I mean, if you're going to have at least satisfying or feel like you're any good as a parent, you've got to create some predictability. And we know that healthy early childhood development is highly correlated to certain levels of predictability. Sure. And so I mean, there's going to be aspects of life. I mean, college felt like a Groundhog Day. I mean, jobs. I got stuck. I worked at Walmart for a time, and oh my goodness, freaking gracious, that is not. I'm not the guy. I worked in the freezer section, and I'm not the guy that can stock a freezer every night for years on end.
Well, I think that's maybe why we gravitated towards a profession where
there's novelty,
constantly different. What we do on a daily basis has a lot of routine to it, but rarely is a session the same as the next. There's a lot of thematic things,
or you start to see storylines or generalized like attachment, right? Something. I mean, I can't imagine a therapist, being at work over 10 years and you don't start to appreciate the importance of a secure attachment, early childhood development, and the need for it to feel confident and like you have a place you belong, right? I mean, we're wired for that,
Even in our work where we have, everyone's unique and people have different stories and different things they've gone through, and that provides a lot of diversity. Even within that, I feel the same thing at times where it's like, I need a change. Right, I need something different, and sometimes you find yourself kind of thinking, oh, maybe it'd be better if I do this or better than if I do that, and maybe forgetting what I have in front of me.
Yeah, that's an important, that's a really important thing to realize, to appreciate, and to accept.
Yeah.
Right. So, what part of this movie did you identify most with in his struggle?
In his struggle.
Was there an aspect?
I don't know. You go first. I need to think
I don't know if I had an answer. It was just a question.
Okay. I don't know.
Was there a particular phase that he got stuck in that you related to, or? I
mean, I feel like he wanted, in the beginning, I feel like it was more of a just immediate gratification. Like he was just trying to fill what he wanted.
What his narcissistic self thought he wanted, or was him being awesome or good or valuable.
He goes through a transition to just wanting to be accepted. And I feel like that's a theme that I've felt throughout my life, where I felt like I'm not acceptable, and so I yearn for that. And I feel like that's, part of what created that hopelessness for him. And from my point of view, that first night she was there with him was he,
the friendship night.
Yeah, that hopeless type feeling is I'm not enough. He wants that acceptance. And I feel like
and there's definitely validity to that point, because he goes to pursue greater cultivation and development into a more full person, right?
Yeah.
So there's a part of him that realizes that he has her friendship and connection, but there's this other place he wants to get to, you know what I mean? Or needs to get to, maybe. Or maybe he just wants to at that point. Maybe he's like, oh, this was a great day, and I've got a window into who I want to be.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like the attachment that he gets from that moment that really gives him the courage to explore and pursue that part of himself. You know what I mean? She inspires that, I think the part that I really identified with, and probably still do, I think initially for sure the part that I identified with the first time I saw the movie was this notion of not being able to get the girl. Of not being the guy that is the guy that attracts the girl that I want to be with. And I think I deeply connected with that.
Yeah.
As a 17-year-old kid, or whenever it came out that I watched that there was definitely my experience was there were girls that I valued, or I saw as what I wanted to have attachment with, and I wasn't able to be the guy that they would notice or see or value. I think that for sure was a part that really resonates And even still, to some degree, did this time around. I mean, I'm definitely more well-adjusted. I'm definitely more emotionally mature. I definitely have confidence. I definitely feel pretty good overall-ish with who I am as a person. But there was still an inkling that I kind of recalled. And I love that part of the movie. I love the part of the movie where he's, getting lessons. I love the part of the movie he's running around and helping people and helping the kid and, and all of that.
I think that's a great point. And it's interesting, Bill Murray is a great actor. Mm-hmm. And I think he does the role great. But it's interesting they cast Bill Murray from like what you're saying, because I think I get a sense of that too, of maybe feeling, like I'm not enough for the girl, or I can't get the girl. And obviously I got the girl of my dreams.
I did too. Yeah.
But, I think of Bill Murray being cast, and I kind of thought that a couple times, like he's so, like at some point so like acts like he's so confident in himself, and makes a comment like even at one point I think that he's like a gorgeous guy, but Bill Murray is not what I'd characterize as a gorgeous man.
No.
His face, is
battered,
a little more homely. Yeah, it's battered.
Well, it's like been through the like been through the ringer, right? Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how I feel,
right.
Like what you're saying, right? I feel like I'm not
weathered.
Yeah, so it's an interesting point, and it's interesting that they cast Bill Murray for that. And I mean, Harold Ramis and him, of course, are great friends.
Well, until this movie.
Well, yeah, and that's an interesting thing too. Is from my understanding,
it's like
they
didn't
don't speak again until Harold's on his deathbed.
Well, it's interesting they didn't learn the lesson that the movie was teaching us, right? Isn't that fascinating? How paradoxical is that? I mean, how many other great movies could they have done together? And they do a movie about repair and growth, and they end on a separation. They end on a schism,
Well, that's a great point, and it makes you wonder what could have possibly have been done or said that would cause years upon years, tens of years.
Yeah, they must have really said some hurtful things to each other. Their friendship must have been
right. They didn't learn from their own movie. Maybe they never watched it again because they were so upset and they forgot what it was about.
It wasn't the way they wanted it to be or whatever, but it was a great movie. Well, I mean, and I love, because any of the attempts to do that again, there's, The Day After Tomorrow is like an action movie with the Tom Cruise one, which I really love that movie
that's
too.
A good one, yeah.
And
any sci-fi is good. But
right. And then there's another one called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things, which I haven't seen, but
bunch of
my daughter
these
told me
types of like movies, or there's a TV episode right on a show. They've redone this a bunch, and that was kind of my question: is Groundhog Day kind of the originator
I think so.
Of this?
Unless I'm just not as well, but I don't know of any other story that had done it before this. It was definitely a novel.
I don't really know either.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to take a look at and do some research on.
And so this right argument of differences, I think played out well, because I think there's a good balance between philosophical and comedic. I feel like
I think so too.
Has this good balance
it's too
that makes
interesting
the movie what it is.
It's interesting that they seem to have struck a balance with it. I mean, I love that it is comedic and has the weight of the philosophical. So it's interesting because it seems like the fact that they both wanted that made it a great movie. Because had it been less philosophical, I don't think it would have been as good. And had it not been as funny, I don't think it would have been as good.
Paradox upon paradox.
Yeah.
If they wouldn't have had this whatever disagreement that caused them to never talk again until Harold had, would the movie has been been as good as it is?
We don't know. It's a great show. I mean, it's just a fantastic show where it stands right now.
I think about that. If it was just a comedy and it had less, I don't know if it would be as rewatchable.
Yeah.
Because there's other ones that I feel like, or there's other like TV episodes. I know this is not, Groundhog Day is not the only one. And definitely, the Tom Cruise one, Tomorrow.
The Day After Tomorrow.
The Day After Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow has that, but I feel like it is the best one I know as far as.
So, what is one of the moments that you think of as the funny, one of the really fun moments?
Well, I mean, there's his whole. So the scene where he's walking past the old guy that he eventually tries to save. That whole
Where he's always
scene, yeah, where he has that interaction where he's looking for money, and then he has the interaction with the insurance salesman guy, and then he has the pothole
that's
part.
a doozy.
Yeah,
He,
that
like,
whole
steps into it
play
3
out
times.
over and over, the different ways they handle it. That is funny to me.
Yeah, I love how he finally shuts him down, where he hugs him and loves on him.
Yeah,
Hey,
acts like
I've
he's
got some time,
wanting to have
And
a
he's all like,
relationship. And then the way that guy runs away just cracks
hilarious.
his run. He had
briefcase at the side, and he's just running hard, getting away as fast as
That
he can.
is classic. It almost reminds me of like a Napoleon Dynamite run
Situation. Yeah, yeah.
Now that I like, but I think maybe even funnier to me is when he stills Punxsutawney Phil or whatever his name is, and he's driving with them.
Don't drive angry.
And then he's driving all over,
out to
and
the
then
left.
he just drives off the cliff with them.
Look to the right. Slide.
Well, the fact that they show Punxsutawney Phil like
just
with
driving the
him,
car.
it's so
It's fantastic. So fantastic.
What
That
about
is.
you? What was
yeah,
your...
that part, because it's tragic and and that's what's really
Yeah.
fantastic, right? Because it is this really horrific place that he's gotten
It
to,
is.
that he's broken by being stuck, and he can't make any sense of what situation is. And so even though he's in the stuck day, the only way out is death. And the fact that they make that hilarious
Yeah. Well,
is fantastic. It's so brilliant that they take this thing that's so heavy
Yes.
and hard and it's tragic that he's breaking, and that he's like, well, there's no way other than this. I'm not going to live through this anymore. I'm going to end it. And then goes through a series of ending it.
And I love,
So those are funny. The ending it parts, the
yes.
toaster in the toaster in the bathtub, and what are the other ways? There's a couple other ways that they make
he does the
allusion
toaster
to.
in the bathtub. I mean, he jumps off the building.
Yeah, he jumps off a building,
dies. I don't
falls
remember
off a
that
building.
Really being funny. I think
No,
that was
wasn't
more serious.
That was more serious. Yeah.
And there
I can't remember all the ways he
was
tries to kill himself.
Another one I thought they showed. He
There
lists
is.
some, but they don't
Yeah,
show them.
yeah.
But I love the Punxsutawney Phil part. I love what what he's doing. But I think what kind of wraps it up for me and makes it really probably the funniest part or scene in the movie is the dialogue that Andy McDowell, the lady, the love interest, and the guy from Schitt's Creek, he plays the mayor in that show.
Oh,
You've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
The dialogue they have after it goes off, and he's like, oh, before the truck blows up, the Schitt's Creek guy, mayor guy, looks at her and is like, oh, he probably survived, or he's probably okay, or something like that. And then it blows up, and he's like, yeah,
that's right.
probably not.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I'm looking at the picture. So Chris Elliott.
Oh, Chris Elliott.
Yeah,
is
Chris.
his name.
Yeah, when he's like, oh, he probably survived, and then it explodes,
Yeah,
and he's all like,
like,
not.
So that
much.
scene, like
That
the way they wrap
is
it up,
hilarious.
is awesome.
Yeah.
A fun side note: so it's filmed in Woodstock, Illinois.
Oh yeah.
Which is just
Are you
like
kidding?
a northern suburb
We should
of Chicago.
totally go do
That would
we
be
should have done a
cool.
road trip if I would have known it. Is that
We could have
far?
done
How
a
far up?
teaser.
How far
Oh,
up
it's
is it?
far
Oh, it's
from
up north.
here.
It's not south.
It's
Well,
it's a
South
suburb
Illinois
of
is not
Chicago.
Oh, okay. Because South Illinois is not far from me.
No, well,
Yeah.
South Illinois to Chicago is
It's super.
what?
Yeah, it's like 5 hours.
5 or
yeah,
6.
it's super. Yeah.
And it's like a north west suburb, kind of. It's a far suburb of Chicago. And our friends in Illinois, they're his parents lived in Woodstock, so we were able to go there.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. But that's
Well,
just like
I'm trying to think if I've been to Punxsutawney. Like I feel like maybe I've been through there for some reason.
yeah.
in
So
Pennsylvania.
Punxsutawney is in. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
it's in Pennsylvania.
I feel like I've been through there for some reason. I don't know
Well,
why. I wonder
of
how.
course,
I wonder
every
how.
year everyone goes.
Yes, I love the festival.
Yes, the
everybody's-
festival.
I mean, those people are having a good time with
They're
Groundhog's Day.
partying
Like
it
that's a
up.
party Groundhog's Day, dude. Like they're serious about that party that they're having on that day. I'm trying to think of what my funniest moment. I think I definitely laughed hardest at this. Ironically enough, the initial suicide scene.
Yeah, what was the initial suicide? I don't remember.
No, it's the truck blowing up. That's the
Oh, that is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
And then you have the the toaster and the jumping off. Maybe it was just those three then.
Yeah, maybe that was the only way that they portrayed. But he does talk. He's like, I've died.
Yeah, he said like hanging himself. He mentioned like a couple.
Yeah,
of
in
other
when he's
ones.
when he's engaged in gluttony.
Yes.
He's shoving Twinkies, just like just immense amounts of food down his gullet. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, those ones strike me as kind of the big moments as well. I remember that whole beginning part of the movie, just loving and thinking it was hilarious.
Well, I think that the arc of the story is good, right? It takes you through really just a vast array. Yeah, and I think it's probably realistic to, what I think would happen. I think that most people probably would go through a period of just kind of experimenting, doing whatever you could, and then getting to the point where you are suicidal.
Yeah.
Right.
I think when I was just looking at my notes here, I think one of the things that really is significant part of the arc as well, if you remember, is her resuscitating the poem "The Wretch." I think that's one of the part of what plays him into how much he realizes he needs to change.
Refresh me.
There's some part, I think, after he's engaged in gluttony that she's talking with him and she quotes "The Wretch" and he kind of laughs, but it's a complete commentary on what he is. Like, you're a wretch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that there's some realization from her, right? Because from the end part, the friendship day where he's like, I've loved you, ever since the moment I laid eyes on you. And so for him to be defined by her as a wretch is the most unlovable thing. They put that dialogue in as he then, goes forth and changes. You know what I mean?
That's a great point.
And I was going to look up the poem or whatever, but I never did. I thought it would be fun to quote it or whatever, but I didn't do it. But yeah.
Well, I think it's one that this movie is one that kind of goes deep, right? There's just so many things that I think you could pull out of it. And what makes it great is that Harold Ramis is able to do it in a comedic way, so that it's laughable, likable by general audience, but also has some real meaning. I mean,
that's the genius of the movie that I think we've pointed out, that they really, maybe in their push and pull of how to do the scenes or whatever it is they were arguing on, really hits it. And I think that notion, it's interesting too, as a part of that change. I think he says something like, well, the other thing that it's interesting that a lot of the catalyst for change is delivered through Rita's character, because another
Rita?
That's the love interest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the producer. She says to him at one point when he's talking about something, she's like, "Well, it's all at how you look at it, Phil." And then that's when he starts to look at his, what would you do with being stuck in a day? And she's like, "Well, how could you? There's another. I think she says silver lining. Like there's another way you can always look at it. You can always turn this into something else." And so she's the catalyst, the wretch.
Yeah.
There's a different way. Like she's the
from the get go, right?
Yeah.
I love her opening scene where she's playing in the blue screen.
Yeah.
Where her sweater's blue or whatever, so all you can see is her head,
right.
And she's kind of giggling. It's so innocent and lovable and likable.
Yeah, she's just a kind, warm, angelic person, right?
And I love in that scene where you see in him, for a brief second, you see in his facial expression genuine, I think, attraction. Like
in that opening scene you're talking about?
Yeah, it's not just
seeing her more,
not just an objective attraction. It's like a genuine emotional attraction.
There's some depth to her.
Hey, I like that.
She can just be playful,
and then it goes away. Right, it's only there for a second,
yeah.
And that's what he draws on, of course, at the end when he's talking to her, or whenever he's talking to her and she's asleep. Is that?
Yeah, I think she falls asleep.
First one,
and that might be part of it too. Is like when they're being the friendship part, and I think he does. Right, she falls asleep, and I think he says like, "I love you."
Yeah.
And, and you're everything, and I don't know how to tell you this. And I think, is there an admission in that scene, or did I just read into it that he's saying like, I'm not good enough for you to love?
Yeah, I think I remember that too.
That he says it.
Yeah, he
says something like, "You're all these wonderful things, and I'm not. I am a wretch."
Yeah,
there's like that realization. And I think that's also again a part of the catalyst.
Yeah,
the catalyst that gets him to go out and start making a better of himself. Right, I'm not lovable, so I need to transform transform myself into someone. And there's real truth to that. It's a really interesting dichotomy to be stuck in as a therapist, where where you want someone to get out of shame and see how they're a person of value.
Yeah.
But people also do need to change things about themselves to be a person of value.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to be a person that's worthwhile in their family, worthwhile in their community, right? It is. It's a paradoxical place to be stuck, because you don't want people coming out of therapy or thinking that, participation trophy, like, you're just great because you're here. But yes, you have value in that you're a human and that you're here and you need to be valued, but you also need to cultivate something that's useful for your family and your community.
I see it kind of as you have shame and then you have resilience building, right? And so if you can try to approach it from this perspective of can you go through experiences and see them as not defeating but as growth, like a growth mindset, as resilience building, then that's where you can promote the progression part and still focus on the shame, right? And I think the balance for me is not so much of they need to be something
or do something to have value.
But they need to look at what they're experiencing. I need to get them to view it in a framework of this is an opportunity for growth.
Right.
And I think I think each of us in our lives, if we can view, kind of where he ends up in a growth mindset, a resilience mindset.
Well, that's what it takes, right?
It helps. Just like you said, that's what it takes to defeat the shame.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because, you don't want a big baby man. You don't want a big baby man that is a cancerous part of a family, like a borderline, that just sucks everything out of everything, right? That's not useful. And people make boundaries because they can't take it. It's too much.
Yeah.
Because there does need to be some reciprocity in healthy relationships. But babies, in one respect, are useless. You know what I mean? They require all of your resources and more to get to a place where they start to become useful and competent and capable. And then there's the seed for incredible greatness, right? So, but babies have so much value that though they don't contribute anything but, let's say, joy in the potential, we'll jump in front of a bus for.
Yeah.
And that's a noble act. And who can't? Anybody that has any salt in them can't sit by and let an innocent, small individual child or kid, die.
Therein is why he keeps rescuing the kid that falls out of the tree.
Right.
Right. Even though it's thankless.
Right. It's like, of course I don't want this kid to break his neck. You know what I mean? And so it's really, right. It's really interesting because even though in adulthood you need to be a useful person to be useful and have value, there's still that baby inside there, right? Like they were still a baby once.
Well, and I think the baby part, and even when you look at like different personality disorders, I think the baby part maybe is just an extreme desire to feel acceptable.
Absolutely, because you didn't get it. Because you didn't get it, right? I mean, you're essentially stuck in that stage because you didn't get or you didn't internalize,
didn't perceive it.
Yeah,
right?
Well, you might not have gotten it, but the both end is a part of it, right? Parents might not have been there, or there enough.
The way you perceive that in interaction.
Though I don't know. Do you think a not perceived enough would be a borderline?
I think that.
I mean, if somebody is so incapable of seeing,
attachment contributes to.
But if they're that attachment injured, haven't they probably had a parent that really struggled to attach healthily, or there could have just been trauma or a tragedy?
You're saying a perceived. Okay, yeah. So I don't know. I'm guessing if borderline, because borderline, is pretty extreme. I'm guessing there's probably not just perceived trauma.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Life. Yeah,
there would have to be more going on.
In my experience with clients I've worked with borderline, that's what I've seen is that there's more than perceived trauma.
Yeah. Yeah,
both are devastating. Both are devastating. Yeah, but I definitely.
And how interesting is it? How interesting is it that with difficult social situations, it's the human experience to assume that I'm not lovable.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, isn't it really fascinating that that's the universal? I mean, I've been a therapist for, 13, 15, somewhere, years in there. And always the place people go to is I'm not lovable.
Yeah. It's core in all of us.
Isn't that interesting? But we all know that we love babies.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people out there, I suppose, that don't love babies. But I love little children.
Well,
they're adorable and wonderful.
It kind of goes along with that common thing of, a lot of times I'll ask someone, hey, if someone you knew were exhibiting some similar behaviors as you, would you be able to forgive them? And or would you feel the same way you feel about yourself? And 99% of the time, they're like, no, I'll forgive them. But they can't forgive themselves for the same thing, right? It's
so interesting.
Really and you
it's interesting that we can't carry that within ourselves, that we can't internalize that, or isn't it fascinating that the mind universally comes to the conclusion that I'm not of value? I mean, you think that's just an outcrop of our culture, or we're wired in such a way that if we don't get the attachment we need, we assume that we're not of value?
Well, I do think there's religious reasons for that, in addition to biological reasons for that. Yeah. But from the biological standpoint, I do think that the way that your prefrontal cortex and limbic system interact, I think the way that your central nervous system engages your amygdala, right, your fight or flight part of your brain,
and the cultivation of the sense of self through that early childhood development.
Yes, I think that amygdala plays a big role on self-view in correlation to your central nervous system reacting. Because when your central nervous system reacts, that's your body really cueing in to danger, right? And then your amygdala makes sense of that danger in some way. And I think for us,
usually a catastrophic way, right?
Well, I think the commonality, the catastrophic sense that our amygdala makes, because most of us are not in immediate
outcrop
danger.
Like that's an outcrop of the fact that the first experiences we have with fear, we don't have a fully developed frontal cortex. And so because we can't make sense of the danger, we internalize the most significant or the most likely outcome of the danger, of death, of separation,
because that's what
rejection.
Our amygdala is for, is protection.
Survival.
Right? But
the survival
for
response.
Most population, there's not a lion there that's going to eat you.
Right.
When
just
you're
a perceived
baby.
line. Yeah, it's a perceived line.
It is. And so I think that what happens is our amygdala, since it doesn't have, we don't have those, I don't want to be insensitive, but the lion that's right there going to eat us. I think that the danger is that I'm not lovable. Well, I'm not enough. That's what becomes the rhetoric that pings the central nervous system and the amygdala and becomes the truth for all of us.
Well, and it's really interesting because it seems like our physiology is as such that we perceive being relationally and emotionally cut off is worse than a lion. I mean, it's much more devastating to be relationally isolated. And I think it's because...
I'd rather be dead than be alone.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's profound, right?
Isn't that what leads to...
suicide.
Yeah.
Well,
and I don't want to be limited.
No, I understand. Of course,
things,
absolutely.
But that is
one aspect is I would rather be dead than alone because it's so painful to be alone. It's so painful for the attachment injury and the emotional belief in the moment of the stress is that it will always feel like this.
Yeah.
And it will only get worse.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is literally never true.
But it's true in that moment because our amygdala and our central nervous system
is responding.
Make it true.
Yeah.
Just like if there were a lion right there next to you, it feels as real as that.
Right. Which was so cool. It was interesting. I was listening to podcasts with Jewel. Mm-hmm. Man, she is emotionally intelligent, dude. She might as well be a therapist for as much time as she
Well, her
spent.
music seems pretty emotionally
and
fueled.
to listen to her story, I mean, her interview with Joe Rogan is really worth listening to, because her development and the wisdom and the way that she overcame her demons is so fantastic. And she talks about in that interview being like 14 or 15, and she's singing at bars. Her mom had left, I think, and she was with her dad, and her dad became abusive after the trauma of the separation or whatever, or them splitting or whatever were the details that happened there. And she's sitting on, and I think she had been accosted. I don't think she had been sexually abused or anything. I don't remember her explicitly indicating that, but she talked about that she wanted to die, and she was sitting on a dock in this small Alaskan town, and she sat there all night, contemplating dying. And she sat there so long that the tide came in and the tide went out.
Wow.
And she said that it struck her like, oh, I'm in intense emotional pain, but it won't, like, look around, like it won't last forever. Like there's a time and a season. And she's like, she just sat there, and it was like the tide came in and it went out. And that was the beginning of how she started to cope,
which is huge.
With her attachment injuries and trauma, was I just have to breathe through it. And then she talks about how she left there. She went to this art school. She ended up in California a couple years later, and she was living on the streets. And she talked about how she was stealing, and she was having panic attacks all the time. And she kept drawing upon that metaphor to slow down. And you know how she cured herself of panic attacks? Was writing.
That's awesome.
She would write through, and she started to become curious about her emotional triggers. And she started to identify her emotional triggers, and she started to identify how she had to heal herself, or she engaged in different behaviors and relationships. And that's where she started writing and singing,
and it's really
to process through. It's just like, oh my goodness.
Well, there's research that shows, working through trauma, there's different writing exercises that are really good for working through and processing trauma.
Yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing is when you look at trauma, or when you look at PTSD, that's under the anxiety umbrella. And
Absolutely.
So you look at panic and writing, it would make sense that there'd be correlation.
Well, I just thought it was so cool to hear somebody so organically
come across it.
Well, engage in their own treatment modality that is a proven treatment modality. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the other interesting thing is, I think from an outside perspective, oftentimes we see someone struggling with something or experiencing something, and we simplify it to, that's not a big deal. What's the issue?
Because of our experience,
Not realizing that for them in that moment, it's
the hardest.
As real as it can get.
Yeah. Your hang up and the thing that's most difficult for you is not the thing that's most difficult for me.
But that doesn't make it real.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I think, where we, from an outside perspective, and to help heal ourselves, can strive to be understanding, empathetic.
Well, I think it's also one of the opportunities that really allows us to complement one another as humans, because if the thing that is most difficult for me, you've negotiated well, and if the thing that's most difficult for you, I've negotiated well, then our relationship, I can teach you how to manage that, and you can teach me how to manage mine. And that's really the beautiful opportunity in relationships and friendships, to if you can have the maturity and the courage to discuss those things.
Well, and it brings, I think it brings emotional health. It brings a more balanced, really a balanced attachment or secure attachment for you. It brings happiness and meaning. And I think that's what we see with Andie MacDowell's character. Is it Rita? Is that So that's what we see with Rita, is she is
well adjusted,
kind, loving. She cares. Like
she is secure.
When Phil starts telling her about how he knows everything, she's skeptical, but she doesn't just
open.
Walk away.
Yeah, she doesn't.
She listens.
Well, and he is a total narcissist, and she's like still giving him a chance.
Does.
You know what I mean?
And I think that's where we can maybe take a role, is that when we're seeing others and we don't understand the pain, and it doesn't, like, we think, well, what's the big deal?
Right.
If we can find a way, not only can we help in someone else's healing process, but I think we can create peace and comfort in ourselves. And I think that's why she's happy.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why we typically will reject is because there's something that we see in someone's insecurity that we feel really uncomfortable with. And so it makes it really real, or we don't know how to help the person in a more extreme symptom that we know ourselves have, because we don't have the answer. So it's like, you're more extremely down the road of dysfunction, but I don't have the answer for that either. So I can't help you.
Well, and really the answer 99% of the time is not anything you need to say. It's just to be there.
Yes.
Just to be there.
Yeah. Which is why I love, and I'll throw it out, not to be preachy, but I love the phrase of the Beatitudes of mourning with those that mourn, because I think that's the most healing thing you can do.
Yep. And how do you do that? You be there and you listen. You don't have to say anything.
You don't have to fix it.
Yeah. Even just being there and putting a hand on someone's shoulder
and saying, I don't even know how to overcome this. This is so incredibly and hard. That's so validating. Hard. It's one of the scenes that I love from About a Boy.
Oh yeah, the British guy.
Yeah,
Hugh. Whatever.
No, not Hugh Jackman. Yeah.
It's not Hugh Jackman, but it's the Hugh guy.
Yes,
the British guy that's in a bunch of movies.
In that
bunch
era.
of love movies.
Yeah, in that time period, and he says to the boy, like he comes in, or the boy's talking to him, and he tells him about finding his mom trying to commit suicide, and the About a Boy guy just says F. You know what I mean? He's like freak. You know what I mean? But he uses the F word. And how the boy's like, I don't know why, but that made me feel better.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, he was like, it was validation of like, holy crap. Yeah. Like, I can't even imagine what that is like, trying to, negotiate coming into your mother having attempted to commit suicide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just a validation. Like, that's all it is. You know what I mean? And that's connection, right? Like, that's the development that happens in the relationship in that movie, which is a really cool. I love that movie.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
There's so many we could do.
We will. Give us enough time. Keep listening.
Week by week.
Keep listening. And every other week you're going to get... every week you're going to get one.
For years. We'll never be able to do
all they make more movies every day.
I know.
I mean, we got so many good ones coming up.
You're stuck with us.
Well, if you choose to listen, you're stuck with us.
That's true.
So by choice, you're stuck with us.
Yeah.
Then we become the oppressive podcasters. You're going to wear these headphones. You're going to listen. Tyrannical podcast. Oh, that's hilarious.
It was good, though. I enjoyed it, and this we chose this kind of with the intent of
a new year
being our New Year's episode,
because this is
thinking about
new starts,
right, and really looking at what and I don't think New Year's needs to be a time for this,
but it naturally is.
But and I think it's looking at how can I maybe find a little more meaning in my life that will bring peace, comfort to me, and maybe peace and comfort to others. And I think that this is a great story to show so much change in someone. I mean, he's a completely different person by the end of the movie.
And the way that change happens, and the way that it doesn't, the way that you build your tolerance of discomfort.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? It's such a fantastic. And I actually want to watch it again after our discussion. I have that experience a lot when we were talking about Family Stone in our interview with your cousin. I wanted to be like, I want to go watch it again, because I think I missed some things that I was really enjoying that you guys were bringing up, which is what's so great about stories.
Yes, and great about the movies that most of the movies we talk about. I don't think we've talked about one yet that I haven't watched multiple times, and that's the thing with these stories, is they're just fun to watch over and over. And you get a little
keep
more
learning,
each time.
keep laughing.
Yeah.
So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed
all.
the podcast.
Happy New Year.
Let us know what movies you want to see. Like, share, comment, engage us, and
awesome.
Have a great new year.
Adios, people.
See ya.